Here we go.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. I think we're live now. So, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Eve Oxberry. I'm editor of Professional Beauty, and I'm excited to say we're joined by Ria-Jaine Lincoln, who is the founder of Ria-Jaine Business Accounting. So, Ria's been very busy over the last couple of weeks, giving advice to salons and spas about really how to manage their finances and access funding and that kind of thing during coronavirus. So, hi Ria, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me, Eve. I think it's great that you're doing this today, and hopefully I'll be able to help as many people as possible. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, anyone who is joining us in the webinar platform, there is a chat function, which hopefully you can see in the bottom right of your screen. So if you have any questions, do type them in there. We're going to kick off with some of the most frequently asked questions that Ria-Jaine has had from salons and self-employed therapists already, but then do keep asking any questions as we go along, and we'll try and get as many of those answered for you as possible as well. So thanks. So Ria, can we start with talking a little bit about the self-employed grant? Because I know you've said you've had quite a lot of questions about that. So who's eligible and how they can access that?
Yeah, so first off, I was really pleased to see that there was some support for sole traders because it was announced quite late in the day. So it was quite worrying waiting to find out how sole traders were going to get some help during this difficult time. So essentially, the key thing is that as a sole trader, if you've submitted an 18-19 tax return, so that's not the tax return that's now becoming due, it's the one done for the last tax year ending April 19, then you will qualify for this 80% grant. And the way that the government are going to work out the grant is they're going to look at 3 years worth of accounts. So that'll be 3 years worth of tax returns going back. Unfortunately, due to the risk of fraud and things as well, they won't be considering the 1920 tax return because people could be submitting that today and, changing figures and things so that they get a bigger payment. The 80% is going to be based on net profit as well as an average of the monthly net profit. So that's after expenses. So that's a really important thing to know. And I know there are some sole traders who maybe made a loss or their income wasn't very high in 18-19 and it's only just starting to increase now. I think they are the business owners that maybe will struggle a little bit and may need to look at other things such as universal credits and things. But the grant should be available in June. We haven't got a date at the moment and you won't be applying for this. So HMRC will be getting in touch with everyone that they think will qualify. And then whether it's going to be an online form submission, I'm not sure yet because it hasn't been released. But that will be, they should be making contact between now and June. The best thing is if you haven't submitted your 18-19 tax return, you've got until the 23rd of April to do that. So they extended the filing deadline so that everyone could get their tax returns in because there's quite a lot of business owners who haven't done that yet. And I think essentially the difficult time now is we know if you've done the 18-19 tax return, you're going to qualify for the grant if you've got the net profit available. It's just what to do in the meantime. That's some of the questions, that I've been getting as well, because waiting until June for any type of cash is quite worrying and quite difficult for anybody, for all of us, really. So I can see some questions popping up there as well.
People already asking questions. So
Yeah.
what would your advice be then to people in the meantime? Because as you say, it's quite a long time to wait. Are there things that they can access now and how do they go about that?
Yeah, it is really difficult because with any of the grants that have been made available, there is a timing delay. So, with furloughing staff members, people have to wait until the system goes live 20th of April to start reclaiming that. Even with the business interruption loans that are available, they can be applied for now. So it is worth, having a look at these. But the application process, you need to really think about the information that you're going to be including. They may need copies of previous year's accounts, copies of the last 12 months accounts. The business has to be a viable business as well, for it to qualify for that coronavirus business interruption loan. But that is one option. Also, there is the option of the universal credits as well, which it says about 5 weeks for your first payment once you sign up for universal credits if accepted, but you do have the option to apply for an advance payment which can be put into your bank within hours essentially if you get accepted for it. So that is probably the best option at the moment if you're waiting for grants and loans and things just to tide you over. But you can also start calling your creditors or your personal, mortgage provider, your landlord. Really go through all of your personal outgoings and make sure you're okay and that you can eat, for the next few weeks, because that's the key thing here. You have to look after yourself as well. So make sure you get all your personal bills organised, get your mortgage holiday. They've got the 3-month mortgage holiday as well at the moment. That is an option. I will say as well, because I know I mentioned this before we came on, if anybody is going to apply for universal credits, if you already receive working tax credits, be really careful and look at your options, because when you apply for universal credits, it will stop that claim. And some people don't know that this is what's going to happen. So they'll apply for universal credits and then they'll go to their bank or, go to take money out on the Tuesday or whatever weekly payment they're used to getting, and it's not there. And then they have to wait on the phone for hours just to find out, well, actually, as soon as you click submit for that universal credit claim, it cancels and replaces the other one. So it's quite, and I'm seeing a lot of people commenting at the moment, saying that they took, it's the advice that we've all been given to go for universal credits, but now they're coming online and I'm seeing a lot of comments saying we've, claimed for universal credits, but now my working tax credits have stopped and I have to wait 5 weeks for a payment. So it is, be really careful and just think before you do anything, whether it's going for a loan, ringing up for universal credits, whatever you're doing, just really do some research or just speak to somebody first, instead of clicking through all those forms online, because it's quite hard to undo some of those applications once they've gone through.
Okay, now that makes complete sense. Is there anything else that is affected in that way? You've mentioned working tax credit. Is there anything else people need to be aware of, I suppose, when they're applying for any of these kind of grants or fundings, that other things might be affected?
I think, as far as I know, with the universal credits claim, it's only the working tax credits that's having a big impact at the moment. With the other grants as well, it is worth noting, especially with the sole trader grant, it is a taxable grant, so you will have to include that in your tax return as income when you're doing your return, and potentially pay tax on it if you're not offsetting it against business expenses. But if you're using that grant to pay for, say, if you're holding a space at a salon, you've got rent that you're paying, that will go through as a business expense and it will reduce any amount that's left and subject to tax as well. So, and it is worth considering as well, if you're close to the 40% taxpayer bracket, just keep an eye and just be aware if it's going to push you over as well.
Yeah, fair enough. And I know also you mentioned you've had quite a few questions about working while, either if you're a sole director and working while furloughed, or if you are receiving a self-employed grant, or if you do in the future receive a self-employed grant. What are the rules around working? Can you still work for yourself? Are you not allowed to work at all? How's that?
Yeah, so with the sole trader grant, you are able to continue working. That's one of the key differences at the moment, that's being debated quite widely. Being a sole director of a limited company, if you're on payroll, then you can furlough yourself and get that 8% PAYE salary covered. It doesn't cover dividends, but one of the rules are that if you are a furloughed director, you can only do the statutory job task, so filing your accounts, doing your bookkeeping. So it does mean you can't be posting and trying to generate revenue on your social media pages and things like that. Essentially, the company is closed for business if the director is furloughed, but then they do allow you to carry on with your statutory requirements, whether that's processing payroll, doing the bookkeeping and everything like that. So yeah, but another thing to remember as well, if you are furloughed and you're a director and you want to come back on the scene and do a bit of a marketing campaign, the furlough can last for 3 weeks at a time. So if you furlough yourself and then you can come off furlough after the 3 weeks and then have a week where you start ramping up that engagement again on your page. And then if you want to switch back to furlough again, you can.
Okay, that's useful to know. That's interesting. That's the detail. And we are going to move on to a bit about business rates, but we have had quite a few questions already about the self-employed grant and these sorts of things. So I don't know whether it might make sense if we go to a few questions now. So while we're still on the self-employed topic, if that's all right with you. So I know somebody has asked here, I rent rooms within a hairdresser. Is there any grants or loans to help with my rent? I know I'm eligible for self-employed grant in June, but how do these things connect? Can they still access any help with the rent or?
Okay, it is really difficult because they do have the business grants at the moment for people who have business premises, but you need to be named on the business tax letter or if you receive the business tax relief. So the situation at the moment I'm seeing is people that are renting the rooms, maybe the landlords are receiving the grants. So there isn't essentially a grant, for these individuals. But if you do have a landlord that is receiving the grant, then maybe speak to them and negotiate a holiday, a payment holiday, because they should be receiving the grant themselves, and that should help them, tie themselves over. So it is just about speaking to your landlord. I know some landlords have been fantastic and have cancelled pay during this time, or they've halved it, or they've said, we'll just pick it back up in June and pay a little extra each month. So that may be the only option if you don't qualify for the small business rates relief.
Yeah, okay. Because I suppose then if you're renting a space from a landlord, you're technically self-employed, and that's your main source of getting support at the moment is the self-employed grant.
It is, yeah.
Okay. A couple of other questions. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the questions and and the interview at the same time. But I think perhaps we'll move on now quickly to another topic that you said you've had quite a lot of questions about is business rates grant. When that's going to come in and who's going to receive that?
Okay, so the good news is some people have been receiving their payments already, which is really good. I think because it will be based on the local authority, so the councils will be reaching out to the landlords. The processes may vary between the authorities as well. I don't know if they're going to be contacting by email or letter. I know some authorities have an online form, so if you go onto the website, you can fill in some details. But essentially, they have got the funds from the government now, and they will be dishing it out to all those who qualify. I did see a question on there about the £10,000 grant, and is that different to the self-employed grant? But yes, that is. So we've got the 10,000 business rate relief grant, and then that's for people who have like a business premises, and then we've also got the 80% grant for sole traders. I just saw that pop up.
Yeah, so I'm just clicking all the questions. There's so many questions. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I think there's a few of them that are asking the same sorts of things. So yeah, there's the separate 80% grant and the 10. Oh gosh, I'm very confused now. Sorry, just scrolling through the questions. So okay, so can you still claim the self-employed grant if you are claiming the business rate grant as a limited company? Is one of the questions.
What's that? So as the limited company, I'm a bit confused with that. So limited company wouldn't be qualifying for the self-employed grant,
but it would for the business grant. So
it would for the business rates, yes.
So you couldn't effectively. You'd have to be one or the other in this instance.
Yeah, but the business rates grant is completely different. So that's if you're occupying a premises, so you've got a shop or a room, and you're listed as a person who receives that small business rates relief, or you're listed on council tax bills for that property. So that is the business rates grant. I think it does get confusing because they're all called grants, and you've got furlough and self-employed grant and Sybil's loan and all different things. So I do understand it is confusing. If it's helpful, I don't mind putting a document together, make like a transcribe of what we're talking about today and answering some of the questions if you want to send it out, Eve, if that would be helpful as well.
I think that would be really useful. We could perhaps put that as a piece of content on the website. We could link back to this the video of the webinar, but also have a written document. I think that would really help people, because I think there's a lot of questions about individual businesses, and everyone seems to have very different circumstances, obviously, that aren't clearly cut into one area or the other. Everyone has slightly different setup.
Yeah, so there is, whilst we're here as well, there is some other support for sole traders. So the July payment on account has been deferred as well now till January. So for some people, they would have saved up for that July payment that's come in. They can now use that money to tie themselves over the next few weeks, because you don't need to pay that until January. And that's an automatic deferral as well, so you don't have to apply for that. But if you've got a standing order or direct debit set up, then you should be cancelling that direct debit to HMRC. And the same is applicable for VAT payments as well. They've also been deferred, so that will help a lot of people. If they've got that money aside, they can now use that just to tide themselves over during the next few weeks. And I think the best thing that everyone should be doing right now as a business owner is really looking at cash flow. because it's great that we've got some of these things that are available to help everybody, but there's a timing delay between, you know, now and when everyone's going to receive that money. And we need to get control of finances now. People need to understand their cash flow. They need to know how much they need to stay afloat in the next few days and the next few weeks. And then what things, you know, how things are going to change when that money is received. So in June, when you get that 3 months back pay, are you just going to spend it all? Are you going to pay it on all those debts that have accrued? Or are you going to plan for the next few months? You know, there's a lot of decisions that people are going to need to make. And one of the tools that I use at the moment with my clients is called Float app. And it's a cash flow tool, and you can literally plan for any scenario. So you can plan like what will happen if we return to work at the end of May, what will happen if we go back in June, you know, worst case scenarios. And I think that is the first thing that people should be doing, so they understand where their gaps are, how much they need if they need to go for a loan, how long they can survive on the money they've got now, and how they're going to use the money when it gets paid into their bank account. So they should have a clear plan for everything, you know, that they're going to be doing in the next few weeks when it comes to cash flow. The cash flow tool, you do normally have to pay monthly for it, but because of the current situation, they're actually offering it for free until the end of May. So it's just, even if you use a spreadsheet for a cash flow, it's just something I really, really urge everyone to do. And that's something that you've got control of yourself now, because we've got these grants, but because we haven't got them at the moment, we haven't got the control. So it is best just to give yourself peace of mind to maybe see and plan out the next few weeks using a cash flow tool.
Okay, excellent. And what was the name of the one you recommend, sorry?
Float, Float.
Excellent, okay. And I suppose if people are looking to plan ahead at the moment, I suppose everything is quite up in the air in terms of how long we're going to be in lockdown, how long when business is going to be allowed to open again. What would your advice be in terms of forward planning? How far ahead should they plan? What kind of eventuality should I suppose they plan?
Yeah, I think at the moment we need to do, you know, the short term, the next week, the next 2 weeks, because if people are running out of money, they need to know how they're going to manage the next few weeks. So this is talking more about personal finances, really, and how you're going to manage at home. And then you need to look at the business fixed expenses and things that you've got that you can't negotiate, and how you can maybe delay those. And using this cash flow tool, if you plan from now, maybe do 2 weeks, and then I always urge 3 months, and then 6 months. You could go further and do 12 months. You know, I just think it's really important to make sure you have a plan, so that you know, okay, the self-employed grant's not coming until June, but I've negotiated holiday payments, I've got this amount of money left, I've applied for universal credits, and I've got an advance payment, and I'm going to be okay for 3 weeks. You know, just so you can see, and once you can visualize how the next few weeks are going to be, it will take some of that anxiety away as well, because not knowing what's going to happen, that just triggers like the best of us, you know, and it's really difficult to try and focus then on what to do next if you're already worried and anxious about finances. If you can see it in the cash flow forecast, or you can see the plan, it gives you that room to relax. Like, you know, the next amount of money is not coming until X, Y, and Z date. You know, you've deferred your payments and your expenses until the next 2 weeks, so you can just relax for those 2 weeks and really get yourself together and think about the next steps, rather than worrying and googling and going on to forums and just freaking yourself out a bit more. Try and get the control back, because that's what we need at the moment. And as difficult as it is going to be for all businesses, with careful planning, we will get through this. Not to say it's going to be easy, because it won't be easy, but we will be able to get through it, and, you know, hopefully we'll be able to manage the situation a bit better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ria-Jaine. And there's been several questions. There's still some in the moderator, so I don't know if perhaps it's best if we go to some of the questions now that people have specifically. So Rena Patel has asked, if you're self-employed and eligible for the 80% grant from HMRC, can you still apply for universal credit and a business interruption loan?
Yes. You can still apply for universal credits. What will happen with universal credits, they work on a cash basis. So you submit to them how much income you earn each month. So what will happen when it gets to June and you submit how much income you've earned, it will be tracked in your claim then. So when you get the income, so if you've got 3 months worth of income in June, you'll let them know on your universal credit journal that you update. And then if they need to make any adjustments to your claim, then it will be made then. But for the time being, it can be, applied for. And when I say adjustments, at the moment, there's no minimum income floor. So if I don't know what the position is going to be in June, if they're still going to have that treatment in June, so it won't have an impact, but essentially still apply for it. You're entitled to it. We're all entitled to apply for it. And then if you are eligible, then get the advance loan as well, as that's an option.
Excellent. So
and the grants, sorry. And the loans.
So I think this relates. There's another a question from Kelly Wilson. This is sort of related. So if you apply for universal credit, how will this affect the sole trader grant? So effectively, it shouldn't impact it because...
No, and because that's based on past profits as well. So essentially, HMRC are going to look back at your average monthly net profit, and then you'll just get that payment. I think it's 3 months worth in June, and you'll receive that payment. But yeah, essentially the only time I can see it affecting universal credits is if the minimum income floor is adjusted, and for the moment there is no minimum income floor, so it should be okay.
Great, thank you. And someone else has asked, I've just gone self-employed in January and applied for universal credit, but what options are there for me? So I suppose there are, anyone who has only recently gone self-employed, is it just universal credit, or is there anything else that they can do for help?
Yeah, for the moment it's really difficult because it's hard to police, the whole system at the minute, and by allowing people that are registered in the tax year that's just gone to sign up for this 80% grant, it's open to fraud and things like that, so people could exaggerate their income. So that's why they're basing it on 18-19, because that year's done and it's finished and tax returns are submitted. So the likelihood of any fraud occurring, is really low. But essentially, you've got the option for universal credits. Do be careful if you are receiving tax credits already, as I said. Do negotiate mortgage holidays with your own mortgage provider, or if you've got if you're a tenant of a private landlord, there is a ban now on evictions during this time as well. So that takes off the pressure if people are struggling with some of the payments. So it's just some of the personal, resources that are available rather than the business grants. The loans are available, but it may be unlikely. The coronavirus business interruption loan is intended for viable businesses that can prove that they've been going on for quite some time. So it may be best to look at a business startup loan, or you may be referred to a startup loan instead of the interruption loan. But essentially, universal credits, that would be the first thing that I would look at and negotiate in my own personal outgoings.
Okay, thank you. Another question someone has asked is, if I receive a grant, do I have to use it to top up my staff wages who are on furlough? Is there any relation?
Oh, no. So with the wages, if you've got staff on furlough, you don't have to pay the 100%. That's up to you if you want to pay them that 100%. But you'll receive the furlough grant, so the job retention scheme. You'll receive up to 80% of their normal wage, capped at 2,500, and you'll be able to use that to pay them. So the grant, if that's the business rates grant, that's separate, and you should be getting both. I don't know if they meant the business rates grant there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It just says the grant, so I think perhaps, but there's no obligation to top up staff wages. That's optional. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone has just asked, just to clarify, if you're receiving the 80% grant in June, can you still sell the odd product between now and June? So I suppose, if you're self-employed or if you're getting a grant later down the line, can you work until you get the grant?
Yeah, so this is really important. If you're a sole trader and you're receiving the sole trader 80% grant, then yes, you can continue working as normal. If you are a sole director and you're on furlough receiving 80% furloughed pay, then no, you can't sell anything, just in case there's other people watching that might take that the wrong way.
No, that's interesting. That's a really important clarification. Like you say, it absolutely depends how your company is set up then.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's loads more questions coming through. I'm just clicking them through. A couple more here. So, okay. For the self-employed payment, will HMRC use net profit or profit before capital allowances?
They've said net profit on the gov.uk guidance. which is one of the issues at the moment, because there are a lot of people who have had a lot of capital allowances or business expenses that have reduced their profit, and who are now were earning quite a decent amount of money, but it will be based on net profit. So that net profit that is submitted when you do your tax return.
Great, thank you. There's another one, quite a long one. There's a lady here who works part-time as a teacher of hair and beauty on PAYE, and also part-time self-employed hairdresser and beauty therapist. So she's entered tax returns every year for 35 years, but it appears that because the self-employed aspect of her income is not her main income, she can't claim anything, even though that contributes 30% of her income. Can she get any kind of support to supplement the self-employed proportion of her income?
It is really difficult, because they are saying that your self-employed income has to be over 50% of your total earnings. So there will be some people falling into that category. And then the only other things that will be available will be the universal credits or the loans, and some of the practical things that you can do with your personal expenses and your mortgage payment holidays and things like that as well. But essentially, if the part-time business has been going for quite some time, then sure, you can demonstrate it is a viable business, and you may be able to go for the coronavirus business interruption loan. So they do ask usually for the last year's accounts and make like a management accounts of the current year, and you will have to explain what you want the funding for and how COVID has affected you. So it may be an option.
Great, thank you. Another question, as a company director, if I don't furlough myself, can I still sell product? So I suppose if you're a director and you furlough your staff but not yourself.
If you're not furloughed, then you can, this business as usual for yourself. It's just the directors that are on furlough and receiving the payout, to cover their payment from, HMRC are covering their wage essentially, then they can't work. And it is like a contractual obligation as well. So if you're furloughed, then, you are off work, and that is it.
Yeah, okay. Jenny Wade has asked, I'm a self-employed therapist with a special treatment licence but work from home. Will I be entitled to a business grant or just self-employed income?
It's really difficult. I think some of the business owners I know that have worked from home haven't applied for business rates. So this is where they're getting caught out a bit. So essentially, if you've applied for business rates and you've been accepted for that small business rates relief, then yes, you can get the grant. But if you don't receive that business rates relief, then you can't. So I think that the license for some of the treatments is different to the business rates. It's more council tax rather than a treatment license. So it will depend if you have registered and if you pay business rates from that address.
Okay. There's another similar one about a self-employed therapist working from home. Can she still advertise her business and also advertise her new online yoga sessions that people pay for? So again, if you're self-employed, that's fine for now, right?
Yeah, if you're self-employed, that's fine.
And then in June, when self-employed people do receive the grant, will they still be able to continue to work then, or is that then once they receive the payment they need to stop working?
As far as the guidance shows, sole traders can continue as normal, and essentially that grant in June is to cover these weeks that you are not working, and your income is affected. So essentially you're still managing to work online, but your income is affected by coronavirus. That's why they're doing this 80% supplement. But there hasn't been any guidance released to say that you won't be able to work in June. As far as I know, sole traders just carry on as normal, because they are impacted. Even if they are selling things online, their income is going to see a bit of a drop compared to previous years.
Absolutely. I've got a few questions from some people that are watching live on Facebook as well, because we are streaming this to our Facebook channel. So there's a couple of questions that are coming from there that I'll just switch to quickly. One from Deborah Dunning, I'm self-employed. Can I claim universal credit while I'm waiting for my self-employed grant in June, even if my husband is still working full time?
Okay, so there's a few things to consider there. So sole traders can apply for universal credits, but it is based on household income. So you may not qualify on that basis. If it depends on how much the husband's earning, because it is based on the household income. So do still contact them and see, how, if you will be accepted. Once the claim is set up, they either say yes or no, but you will be in the system. So later down the line, if things were to change with her husband's job or anything, then you'd be in the system and be able to get that support.
Thank you. One other question. I've been self-employed for 2 years, so I've submitted 2 years of taxes. However, I've made a loss both years so far. Will I be able to claim anything? Because it says you need to have profits up to 50k.
Yeah, unfortunately, the average amount will be based on across the 2 years. So if it has been a loss, this is where it's been quite difficult as well for some business owners, because the last few years they have been making a loss, where more people have been looking to beauty and setting up as sole traders and things, and this would have been their good year that we're just coming, that we've come to the end of now. So had they have took this year into consideration, it would have been better for them, but unfortunately it is based on the net profit, and if there isn't any profit, then that will affect the amount.
Sure. So that's difficult if people have obviously started up a business and you don't necessarily expect to turn a profit initially.
Yeah.
So for them, it would be probably universal credit would be their best option.
Yeah, and there are some of the business loans available as well. There are a lot of lending platforms as well, such as iWalker and Capitalise, where you can get different types of loans. So if you use like a card machine, you can get loans, and it's based, the percentage is based on the income you normally generate from your card machine and things. So there are other options out there, but you just need to be really careful because interest rates, and just really think about how much you really do need during this time. Because with the mortgage holidays and some of the protection that the government have offered, you might find that when you sit down and do your cash flow forecast, you don't need as much as you thought you needed, once you've negotiated those payment holidays and things.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Another question from Sarah Kelly Smith. I've been self-employed. Oh, sorry, that's the one I've just done there. Another question from Michelle was just to clarify: do I need to put the 3 months self-employed wage grant and also the whole 10,000 grant through as income? I realise some of it will be cancelled out due to rent and bills.
Yeah, so you will need to account for it in your accounts. But as I say, even with the 3-month grant, the sole trader one, if you've got rent or business insurance or other business expenses that are stacked up, the net effect, will reduce any tax that is needed on it. So the grants and even the sole trader grant is essentially to help you get by these next few weeks, but it is to keep the business going as well, because there are other options out there, such as universal credits to help with your personal expenditure, and then you've got these grants and the 80% self-employed grant, and then the business rates grants to help with your business expenditure. So it's really good to try and separate the two, and rather than getting your £10,000 grant and maybe spending it on something else in the household.
Yeah, absolutely. Just another one just to clarify, Jenny is asking, do we have to apply for the self-employment grant, or do we wait for HMRC to contact us? Also, how will they contact us?
HMRC will be making contact. It should be by letter, I assume, because they won't be sending out emails and things for this, but I'm assuming it will be by letter, or there will be an online platform release like the furlough platform that's due to release the 20th of April. But because it's not expected until June, I don't expect the scheme to be live until early June. So, but they will get in touch, and it will likely be a letter.
Excellent, thank you. Another question: as a limited company, what are the options if I am a freelancer? So if you're a freelancer but you've set up a limited company, what's the best route?
It's really difficult there, because if you're paying yourself dividends as a director, that doesn't get reported as income as such on the tax return. So you're really caught in a difficult space there. And the only other options that would be available would be the loans that are available, the universal credits, really monitoring like the cash flow and things as well. And it will depend on what's happened previous years as well with your tax return, and how if you are a freelancer, how you are reporting that income, whether it's going to be as dividends or sole trader income.
Okay, thank you. Another question from over on the Facebook platform: can I apply for universal credit if I already get child tax credit? Is there any impact there?
I would be really careful, or I would check that. I'm not sure if child tax credit's the same as the working tax credits, but essentially if you receive, I think, working tax, and that might be combined, and if it's like a weekly payment I think they get, then that will be stopped. But it's factored into the universal credit. So we say stopped, but then universal credit covers everything. So it takes everything into consideration. child benefit is different, and that will carry on the same, but your tax credits will be affected. So just do think about it, or go to Turn to Us. It's an online website where you can check what benefits you'll be entitled to, and just really think about it before you make any of those claims, or sit on the phone for 6 hours to be told that it's going to impact you.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Gemma Evans. Will you need to include any universal credit payments in your 2020/21 tax return?
No. So with universal credits, you'll need to report your income to universal credits, but that doesn't go into your business account, so you don't have to declare that on the tax return. It's all linked as well, so HMRC will likely know what benefits everyone has got, and the same as well. If you get PAYE, if you receive a wage and you go onto universal credits, that PAYE will be fed through to universal credits as well, so they'll know how much you're earning. But yeah, it doesn't get declared as income.
Excellent, thank you. And another one we have from Amanda. If you have a member of staff who you have furloughed and she works at another job still, should I be furloughing her? So if she has 2 jobs, how does that work?
As far as I know, the guidance says that you can work in the other job if you're furloughed for one employer, as long but you can't work for the furloughed job. Sure. If that makes sense. So if she's already got an employment contract and they haven't furloughed her, that doesn't change. That contract is still the same for her and her other job.
Okay.
It depends as well, because I know there's some people some contracts might have a limit on what their staff members can do. So it really just depends as well on your contract. If you've got that clause in your contract, to say that they shouldn't be working for other people, then maybe I'd definitely speak to HR about that one. But essentially, you can have more than one job, and if you're furloughed on one, that doesn't affect the other one.
Excellent, thank you. I think there's loads of other questions that I've not managed to get to. There's so many questions here at the moment.
I'll happily go through all of them after, and I'll pop together a FAQ document.
That would be amazing. I think because we are coming up to the end of the time we have available. So I know there's so many people who still want advice out there. So sorry if we didn't get to your question, but thank you so much, Ria-Jaine. I think that's given so much. Well, I've certainly learned a lot, and I think that's given loads of great advice to people. But we will we'll upload this webinar to the professionalbeauty.co.uk website, and as Ria has very kindly offered to put together a written document for advice as well, we'll share that. So yeah, in the meantime, thank you so much, Ria-Jaine, for joining us, and thanks everybody else for your questions. We have got more webinars coming up over through this platform, so check those out on our website and for the full schedule for this week. And we're going to do one a day from now on. So yeah, keep an eye on the website. And in the meantime, thank you very much, Ria-Jaine.